everybody, welcome to yet another video. So today we've got another in a series of something versus something else, and today it's the Anest Iwata LPH80. That's with an E4 cap in 1.2, and we're pitting that up against the also 1.2, the Meiji Finer Spot. Now the Finer Spot and the LPH80 are small, physically small spray guns. So I put them in a category which I normally say mini stroke micro, because, you know, I did I'll put a link in the description, but I did a top 12 video on mini guns, and it's, some of the mini guns are actually physically like more of a midi gun. So the word mini gun, you know, can express quite a few different things, but these are more of what I would call a micro mini. And I will do a video one day on the smaller guns, you know, the top 8, because people like a top 8. I don't particularly like doing a top 8 actually, because the hardest thing for me is trying to rank the guns in order. You know, you might have to put one ahead of the other, whereas your favourite may be the one that you don't put at the top. And I don't put them at the top because it's my favourite. I look at the price of them, how good they are, how well they're made, reliability, etc., etc. So it's quite complicated in my head to actually put a winner. People often will message me and say, Finer Spot v the LPH80, which one's the better gun? And the answer to that, and the reason for doing this video, is they're actually quite different to each other. Although they're physically about the same size, the output, which you will see when we get to the spraying, the output is quite different. For those new to the channel, what we've got is, I mainly do motorcycle stuff, but I've got a couple of car panels that are identical, and we do exactly the same thing to both the panels. You know, same person's doing them the same day, you know, because your frame of mind can give you a better paint job sometimes. You just feel better about things, whatever. You know, same frame of mind, the same clear coat, and in this case this is a multi-mix 2, which is a clear coat we get in the UK. I don't think it's that widely available, but it's a good budget clear coat, if that makes sense. Some people don't get on with it. I do actually. I think it's absolutely fine. I would normally use the Cap C. That's the 6030 Cap C, because I do prefer that. I think it holds on to its gloss a little bit longer, and it's the same price, and I just think it just looks better. It goes on slightly better as well. The flow out of it is slightly better, but I don't normally, you'll see me using a microwave here. I will point out that you shouldn't do this. I'm sure it's not safe whatsoever, but it is something I do. I found about between 8 and 10 seconds per 100 milliliter of mixed clear coat. Gives you a temperature of about 35 degrees. It depends obviously on the ambient temperature. On this day it was actually 15 degrees Celsius, the ambient temperature, which is, what's that? Put myself on the spot. That's about, oh, what's that, about 50? No. Something like that, isn't it? Yeah, about 50 Fahrenheit. So it wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. So I like to warm the clear coat up because it helps it flow out better. So, you know, when you put a coating on, you're putting on loads of small droplets, and those droplets have got to merge into each other to make a coating. And I find that warming it up does a few things. One of the main things it does is it allows that flow. Allows that flow to be greater, but it also starts the clear coat going off quicker, so it allows it to flow out. It obviously depends on the clear coat, and it does depend on the temperature and how much you've got to do as well, but it allows the clear coat to flow out, reach a nice even gloss, so a nice flat finish, and then go off. So you're not reaching the point where it's still staying cold and you might start to get runs. It's not automatically assumed that that's how it will happen, but once you get used to it, that's basically how it does happen. So I'm using a multi-mix 2, and the reason for using that better quality clear coat with these two guns is because both of them, neither of them put out a lot of material. The Meiji puts out more material than the LPH80 does, and some of that's going to be down to the fact that it runs at a higher pressure. The Meiji runs around about 1.5 bar, whereas the LPH80 is very, very happy at 1 bar. You can put it up from there if you want to. Depends on the viscosity of your material. If you put it up too high, logically sort of like nearly 2 bar, you'll get a fluttering in the pattern because it's just too much for it. It doesn't like it at all. It's designed for 1 bar, and it works perfectly well at 1 bar, whereas the Meiji is recommended about 1.5 bar, and I normally use it about 1.5 bar. So 1.5 bar is about 20 psi, 19 psi, and obviously 1 bar is about 14 psi, 14 and a bit. So yeah, those both of them are relatively low pressure. A lot of air guns, a lot of spray guns will, if you're unsure, I normally start about 2 bar and either go up or down, but these don't run on that sort of pressure. So one of the things you always notice with these smaller guns is the relatively low overspray. You can see here you're not getting clouds and clouds of overspray. Another thing you'll notice is that because this is the multi-mix 2 clear coat, and this is why it makes a difference, is these are recommended as a grounding wet coat, so not a full coat, but enough to obviously make the panel wet, and then a full final coat, so like a coat and a half really. But one of the things you notice is that this is a full-size panel, and somebody, and I'm sorry if I'm diversifying a bit, but somebody said to me once about the LPH80, they said, oh, because I was complaining it was quite slow, and I was doing a bike tank, which is, as I said before, normally what I do. They said to me, oh, you know, if you know what you're doing, you can do a car panel without any problem. Now, I didn't say it could or it couldn't do a car panel. I just said that it's quite slow compared to other guns. It's quite slow, which it is, because as I said before, it doesn't throw out loads of material. But one of the things coming in doing this test was it's the first time I've used either of these on a car panel, because I just don't need to or want to. And as I say, these are 2 panels exactly the same, so I thought, well, I'll try them on the panel. And it's surprising, as you see now, how easy it was, how easy these dealt with a car panel. They give you a very good finish. It would be quite possible to use these for two or 3 panels on a car without much hardship whatsoever, and by that I mean speed. You would be able to do a few panels, 2 or 3 or 4 panels on a car with these without much hardship, basically. But you will find it easier, if that's what you want to do, you will find it easier with the Meiji than you will the LPH80. The LPH80 is obviously coming up, and you will see how that dealt with exactly the same panel, another reason for having the same panel. But the Meiji puts out more material, and as I said, I think that's because it runs at a higher pressure. It's certainly got a bigger fan. When you look at the fan pattern, you see it has a bigger fan. You'll also see, if you notice, that I actually adjust the pressure. I started it at 1.5 bar, which is, as I say, where I will normally use it, but there was a slight split in the pattern. It was slightly top and bottom heavy, and that normally means that your pressure is too high. You know, if the spray gun's cleaned out correctly, that normally means that the pressure is too high. So I just backed it off to 1.4. The pattern give a nice solid pattern. Then you still get full atomization, and it works absolutely fine. I'm hoping to do a video actually on spray patterns, because I'm discovering that some people like to have a video about the basics, because if you're new to spraying, people do like to know the basics. So maybe we'll do one about spray patterns and how the different pressure and the different viscosities of the material affect the spray pattern. But generally speaking, the thicker the material, the more pressure you will get away with and without the fan splitting, the pattern splitting. But yeah, the LPH80, which we're going to use now, as I say, puts out less material. It's no more refined, it's just different. It would be ideal for smaller things, whereas the Meiji is more ideal for larger things, but it can obviously cope with the smaller things as well. So I suppose if you was to say which one would be the most universal of the two, you would probably pick the Meiji, because it is probably more universal as an all-round gun. It uses slightly more air, so if you're on a small compressor, the Meiji will be harder to power. But we're talking relative here. We're talking about 2.8 CFM for the Meiji. That's at 1.5 bar, as opposed to about 2.2 CFM for the LPH80 with the E4 cap. So you can see that neither of these are air hogs. You compare that to, say, an SRI Pro Light or Pro Light S, as they're called now, same gun, about 3.8 CFM for the TE5 cap, and the HV5 cap is about 4.8, I think, CFM, but that's at 2 bar. So you can see that these things are not using a lot of air at all. So if you've got a small compressor and you've got a few panels to do, we're seeing here that it's quite possible and not particularly difficult either. As I was saying about using the MM2, because it's a clear that actually runs out quite nicely, you only need a relatively thin film to get that flow out. And because both of these don't put out a lot of material, by full-size gun standards, or by a lot of minigun standards, really, because they don't put out loads of material, it means that you can get a nice thin film of a better quality clear coat, or an easier flowing clear coat, and get really good results and save materials at the same time. I was saying the other day, a video I did, and it was we did some bike plastics, and I was saying there that it's actually beneficial in some cases to have a thinner film of clear coat, because it seems to stop it cracking. It allows it a bit more flex. Now we're talking about something different there. We're talking about a flexible panel, probably with flex additive added as well, but I'm on about the thickness of film. If you put quite a thick film of clear coat, which some of the clear coats I've got do need a good hosing on, just simply to get the flow. You need that much material to get the flow. It does allow you things like plenty of room to sand and polish and things like that. So if you've got, by its very nature, if you've got a thinner film of clear coat over the top of your base coat, it allows you less scope for sanding, because you run the risk of obviously going through to the base coat. Again, you'll see me heating the clear up, exactly the same procedure. I tried to get the clear coat up to the same temperature. As I say, everything is as the same as I can get it within reason. The only thing that is different is the time. One's going to be an hour and a bit behind the other, because I just simply I can't use both guns at once in the same place effectively. So that's the only thing that's different, but it does give you it does give the painter very good feedback as to which is better than the other, or which is more suited to a particular task, because the LPH80 is a supremely fine atomizing gun, but the Meiji is just as good. I did a tank once in direct gloss with the Meiji, and it was stunning. It came out stunning. So it's capable of doing lots of different materials. And as I say, of the two, it is a more universal gun. But if you're mainly doing smaller parts, say you're doing scale models or small cycle parts and things like that, you know, cycle frames where the thickness of the tubing isn't particularly big. Maybe the LPH80 is more suited to you, but you were just going to have to go with what you really think is best. As far as build quality goes on the pair of them, the Meiji is every bit as good as the LPH80. I used to refer to the LP before I discovered Meiji. I used to talk about the LPH80 and describe it as a Swiss watch. Now, I haven't got a Swiss watch. I spend too much money on spray guns to afford a Swiss watch. But it gives you a feeling of precision, something that's made to a precise tolerance. And the Meiji does exactly the same. It has a chrome body, whereas the LPH80 has a chrome body, but it's not the same standard of chrome. So the Meiji actually sticks out more as more of a shiny gun. But the coating on the LPH80 is just toned down. Really doesn't mean that it's not as good. It's just toned down. So looks wise, you would just have to look at them and take your choice. The Meiji is probably slightly bigger, not a lot, but it is slightly bigger. You'll see here the LPH80 how much smaller the fan is, and this is with the E4 cap, and it's got the 1.2 tip. So this is the biggest you're going to get an LPH80. That's the biggest fan you're going to get on one, and you'll see this is the first coat. So we're just, as I said, if you didn't hear it, but I'll say it again, this is a sort of like a half wet coat and then a full coat clear. So the first coat will always be faster because you're just wetting the panel up. This is also a flow coat, so it's sanded down clear coat, because these panels don't go on anything. They're just there for practice, basically, and for me to do these comparisons. So they wet up quite easily anyway. When you've got just base coat on there, it takes a little bit more clear for them to wet up. But the second coat will be more, if you're looking at the timings, you know, if you go back and look at the timings between the two, look at the second coat rather than the first coat, because the second coat is the sort of coat you're aiming for a finish, and the idea is that will give you more of a indication as to which one is faster than the other. I haven't actually looked. I'm thinking it's probably going to be the Meiji. As I say, the Meiji does put out more material and it's got a bigger fan, so that should equal being faster. And I think looking at it now, you can see it, but you can see how easy it is to actually do a panel. This panel takes about of clear coat, about 190 millilitres of clear coat. An average door on a car would probably take about 200, maybe 250, depending on the size of the car. So you could quite easily do a couple of doors with one of these guns if you're at home, using 2.2 CFM, so you don't need a big compressor. And, you know, let's face it, you'll get good results. These, you know, one thing that both of these do, you can't say that either of them are wanting for results. Both of them are capable of giving superb flat finishes, if that's what you want, and anything in between. You know, by varying the air pressure, your distance, etc., and your speed, you can get more or less whatever finish you want. But yeah, I mean, two small guns that on the face of it look very similar, but are quite different to use. And using them back to back like this, it's quite stark how different they are. But both of them are thoroughly recommended. I would not recommend one above the other. As I said before in the rest of the video, it just purely depends what you actually want to do, you know, what you've got lined up for these. But certainly don't dismiss it as being these are only for, you know, for small motorcycle part scale models, etc., because as we've seen today, they're quite capable of doing full panels, you know. And if you've got 20 minutes spraying in you can do a panel and a couple of doors, whatever you want. Yes, it's going to take you time, but you'll only need a small compressor. You won't get loads of overspray. Happy days, really. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video as always. I can't tell the difference between these two. Both of them did a cracking job. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember which way round these are, but we'll have a look. Which way were they? Right, so the LPH80 is the one on the left, which means obviously the Meiji is the one on the right. Cracking finish. You know, atomization is something that these two things specialise in. So providing you don't mind the time, you know, you're not going to use one of these for doing a whole car in a body shop because you haven't got the time. But if you want something that's good at home, then either of these ones are ideal. The Meiji, by the time you buy a cup, is probably a bit cheaper actually. I get these from Painting Tools Japan. I'll put a link in the description so that you can see where I get them from, and if you want to get them, then you can. Alright then, guys, thanks very much for watching as always, and you keep watching them and I'll keep them coming. Cheers guys, thanks as always, bye bye.